So a little bit about Rea. Can I brag on you?
All day. Good.
Rea is an award-winning, traditionally published author of 4 nonfiction books and 4 best-selling novels. Not Her Daughter, Because You're Mine, Until I Find You, and Secrets of Our House. They're amazing as well, so read those. After you read this one, she is also known as the book doula, where she helps other authors birth their books into this world. Correct. So a little bit about the other year. I believe Brenda Novak said it best when she said, in this world altering women's fiction novel, single mother Kate Baker looks away for a single moment, only to lose sight of her daughter in the ocean. As a result, her world splits into 2 separate realities. One where she gets to keep being a mother, and the other where she doesn't. The message is clear. Love your people. So tell me a little bit about this novel. This is definitely different for you. Tell me how this idea came about.
Definitely. So typically I write suspense novels in the past, and this book the other year is a little bit different. It skews into magical realism, and I'll explain why. But this book is one of those books that came to me in a single moment. I have an 11-year-old daughter. She was 9 at the time that I wrote this book, and every year we take her to the beach on vacation for her birthday. And she was running on the beach. She ran into the water right when we got there, and there was a red flag rippling in the wind behind us. And I told her, be careful. And as I was watching her, I just had this entire book concept come to me in a single moment. And I really love time, the concept of time, how fast it goes, how you can play with it. And I don't know, some people might be too young to know the movie Sliding Doors, which is about this woman who's kind of living 2 different realities. But that's how this book kind of came to me, is a woman, we're dropping in on a woman who's navigating a year in her life. So she has a very robust career as an agricultural engineer. She is raising a very precocious 9-year-old daughter. And she's single, but she's kind of contemplating romance in her life, and she appears beneath the wave. And she panics. But this is where the book kind of is a little bit unusual, and that magical realism comes into play. The book splits into 2 parallel journeys. So that means there's 2 chapter 1s, 2 chapter 2s, 2 chapter 3s. And so in 1 year of Kate's life, her daughter pops right back up to the surface of the ocean. Life carries on as usual. And in the other year, her daughter does not resurface, and she must kind of grapple with losing her child. So as a mom myself, it was really hard to write this book, being so close to home, but it was really, really fun to play with time.
So the structure of the book, it goes back and forth between these parallel worlds. How did you write it?
Yeah, so I actually wrote it exactly as it is in this book, which, usually, I guess if you have 2 different storylines, it's almost like 2 books in one. You would normally write one whole story first and then the other one. But writing the storyline in which her daughter dies was so hard for me. I was like, I need to break every other chapter. So I just broke it up and would go from one chapter or one storyline to the next storyline. And I wrote it, again, exactly as it appears in the book.
And as a reader, for me, you're going through that one storyline that is so heartbreaking. I don't want to give away too much, but when you flip to the parallel storyline, it is a little bit of a reprieve.
Yes.
Which I appreciate as a reader. Yeah, absolutely. So location, you have 3 main settings. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, so I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I don't think anyone's ever been there, but that was just a really easy place for me to set it. And again, because I was using some of my own personal details from my life and my daughter's life, it was fun to just kind of call out different places that we know. But we do go down to the beach every year, as I said, in Florida, so I set it there. But there is a 3rd location called Serenbe, Georgia, which is outside of Atlanta, and it's like this little self-sustained agri-hood that almost feels like you're on a movie set. And the first time I went there, I was like, I've never been any place like write some portion of a book there. So I set part of this book there without giving too much away, but it was really, really fun to write about.
Has anyone been to Ceremony?
Yeah, you should check it out. Go for a weekend.
It's on my list after this book for sure. At the end of the day, this book takes a hard look at grief. It also explores work-life balance, romantic relationships, and parenthood. What do you hope that the ultimate takeaway is?
You actually said it in the beginning, like what Brenda Novak said, but it's just love your people. I think it's so easy, especially in our day and age where we're so busy and distraction prone, and a lot of us aren't really present with our families, with our kids, with our partners, with ourselves. And so I think for this book, because life can change in a single second, and this character loses her daughter because she does make, that's one thing I haven't said yet, but she gets a text from her ex-husband and looks down at her phone, and when she looks up, her daughter is gone. So I wanted to kind of talk about that too, because we are so plugged into our phones, it's just really easy to not be present. So I think just my main takeaway is just really, I've had a lot of moms reach out after reading this and be like, oh my gosh, I'm hugging my children tighter and just spending more time and being more present and feeling more present, because it's book was basically just scare tactics to love your kids as much as you can and spend time with them.
And I will say you do a great job of having those moments in both parallel worlds, you know.
Well, I think, like, you know, the storyline where Olivia, her daughter Liz, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I mean, if you're a parent, you know that it's not happy all the time, it's not bad all the time, but her life isn't perfect. She's still trying to figure out relationships and work-life balance, which I think is kind of an elusive concept in and of itself, and she's a single parent, and so I just wanted to really kind of showcase what a lot of people can relate to as readers.
Absolutely. So on top of being a writer, you are also a book doula. Can you please explain
what
a book doula is?
Yes, so I, for as long as I've been a writer, which has been a really long time, I have always helped other writers navigate this really tricky industry. Publishing can be a little kind of hush-hush, and 80% of all people want to write books, but a lot of us are like, I don't know what to do next. So as I was getting published and realizing, gosh, this is really difficult, and a lot of people need to know what they need to know. So I just started working with people on the side, and just mostly actually nonfiction authors who wanted to get published, and I was matching them with agents and getting them book deals and realizing, like, oh, this is really something. I actually kind of know what I'm doing here. So I decided to start a business where I help people come to me. They want to write a book. We figure out what their goals are, what publication path is best for them, and then I help usher their books into the world. And to this date, I've helped hundreds and hundreds of first-time authors get their books out there. I do ghostwriting for kind of some celebrity clientele and public figures, and just kind of feel like it's my duty as an author to give back in that way and really help, because, as you know, it can be a really, really tricky industry.
It can be an interesting journey.
Yes, yes it can. Yes, it can.
So for those people who do want to write a book, what is your biggest piece of advice?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people ask that, it's like, oh, just write a good story and it'll find a home. But I actually am the opposite in that, yes, you want to write a good story, but I think you need to understand that this is a business, and you need to understand how it works, understand how you get paid, what kind of writer or author you want to be. I think we don't ask enough questions, and we don't really know how it all works. So I always suggest just digging into the business. If you were going to get a job anywhere else, you wouldn't just be like, well, I don't know how I'm going to get paid or how it all works, but I'm just going to work this job anyway. So it's the same thing. And if you want to build a career, you have to know how it all works.
What about for you as your typical day in the life as a writer?
Yeah.
Where do you write? This could be a great intro about your studio.
Yeah. So there is no typical day for me. I mean, I really love those writers that are like, I write from 8 to 5 p.m. every day, and that's not me. I am a mom, I run a business, and I don't get to write every day, but what I realized, all my books have been written really fast, And I write when I get inspired, and I do have word count goals and things like that. But during the pandemic, I realized that I was going to quite possibly murder my entire family if I didn't get a separate space to work in. So I ended up getting, I bought a tiny home and set it on my backyard, in my acre backyard, and created it, filled it with all of my favorite things, my favorite books, and just really curated this beautiful space that was just for me. And January 1st of this year, I went out, first day of the year, so excited to, write and start a new year, and got to the door and realized that everything inside of it had burned. There had been a fire. I'd left a candle burning. I caught a statue on fire, my Goddess of Words statue, which is so ironic, and it burned absolutely everything. So I lost all my first edition books, all my client books, just anything and everything. And kind of rebuilt it a few months ago. So I still use that space. But, I am working on client work so much of the time that I really do kind of bounce back and forth between their work and my work. And, there's not always a balance every day, but I am being creative almost every day, though I did take this summer almost entirely off, which was such a gift.
So would you say that the other year is a rebirth?
Yes, a rebirth from the book doula. Yeah, it really is, and it's a different kind of, like I said before, kind of a different book for me. And I was trying something new with a new publisher. So yeah, it's kind of a new season for me. And I'm going, as long as I'm with this publisher, I'm going to continue to play with time and all my subsequent books with them, which is really fun too.
So speaking of, what is next for you?
Yes, so I actually have a thriller that is coming out in March, which is the polar opposite of this book. And then another book with this publisher called In Every Year, that, not In Every Year, it's the other year, In Every Life, that comes out next August. So 3 books in 1 year, which is interesting. I've never done that before.
In your year of rebirth.
In my year of rebirth.
Literally from the ashes.
From the ashes, yes.
So I would love for you to read a little bit from your book right now.
Yes, I will. Luckily, this prologue is very short and it doesn't spoil anything, so we'll just start from the very beginning. All right, prologue. The red flag ripples in the wind. Olivia is all business, her body primed for the impending crush of waves. She squints up at me as if to ask permission. If I go alone, will I be okay? I nod. Olivia knows her boundaries. She passed her swimming test at the YMCA 3 years ago, and she will stay close to shore. Other adults and children dapple the ocean like buoys, tow-headed, brunette, shaven. It's all one nation in the arms of the sea. Olivia goes to Sandcastle, mildly curious, then retrains her focus on the ocean. The current is strong, Liv. Stay close, okay? We've talked extensively about how to swim parallel to shore if she is ever tugged out or gets spun up and away from the undertow. I gaze at her, toes flexing against the pliable sand, chest aimed at the water, her defiant chin angled toward a flawless sky. I love the way she announces herself to the ocean, the respect she has for its ruthless power. While she still makes occasional comments about the salty air, the stench of fish, or the way the coarse sand scrubs her ankles, she adores the water as much as I do. Liv bobs her head, eyebrows scrunched, her mind already inside the thrashing waves that churn against the beach, receding in a froth of clotted white foam. I delight in her anticipation, wishing I'd worn my bathing suit too, but we'd come straight from the car instead of heading to the rental house first. She'd managed to wriggle into her suit in the back seat and had been so impatient to get to the water, she hadn't even closed the car door. The first wave smacks her square in the chest. Her squeals send a swift punch of joy straight to my heart. It melts the tension from the overly long drive, the way we bickered about nothing. Mostly, she'd stayed hunched over her iPod Touch while we waited out a horrific accident, which resulted in an extra hour of travel time. When we passed the hunk of disfigured steel on the highway, like some god-awful modern art installation, I told Olivia to look away, but I hadn't. The image of the flattened truck was seared into my mind. The blood splatter along the pavement, still fresh. The endless ambulances and cop cars. I am still processing it, hoping whoever was in that truck is okay, but also knowing that almost no one could survive a crash like that. Olivia waves. I wave back and take one picture of too many as her limbs buck and dip in and out of the ocean. I send a quick photo to my best friend Jason, who arrives tomorrow with his daughter Ayana. He sends back a heart emoji and a quick line. I can't wait to be there with you. The sudden sexual tension between us floats through my mind. After one recent admission from Jason, wondering what we would be like as more than just friends, and I begin to panic. We have never crossed any physical lines, and I haven't dated since my divorce. But something has definitely shifted, and I'm nervous to see what might happen when we are alone on vacation. I text the same photo of Liv to my mom, then post one on Instagram of my own sandy feet, which my ex-husband, Michael, insisted evolved from hobbits. I smile at the memory, all the ways he used to make me laugh. The smile vanishes as I think of his text message yesterday. He wants to talk. We haven't seen each other for over a year. He's been in Israel on an archaeology dig, but I know that in typical Michael fashion, he's going to want to jump right back into Liv's life, even though his absence has left a painful residue for us both. Michael is either all in or completely wrapped up in his work. He's never been able to juggle being a full-time father and an archaeologist, something that has crushed me time and time again and disappointed Liv. While he's been gone, I've been rethinking our co-parenting arrangement. Though we technically split custody, Liv lives with me. He's always on the road, always on a dig, something we used to embark on together before I became a mother and decided to take a steadier, more stable job in Nashville. Michael didn't want to move from our life in Virginia, didn't want anything to change, but he did it for me. However, once we moved, he was constantly on the road. It got to the point where I told him I didn't want a husband sometimes. I wanted him all the time, and he just couldn't make that promise to me, to Liv, to us. My body tenses as I replay that painful decision to separate, then eventually divorce. Becoming a single mother changed my life completely. For Michael, it has changed nothing. Now, as the water rushes over my feet, tugging and receding, I tow a sand dollar free, rinse it clean, and wag it in the air at Liv. Hold on to it for me, Mama. She wipes the salt from her eyes and dives under it again. I pocket the treasure and check the time. It's our yearly tradition to order pizza and salads for dinner on our first night of vacation, and the delivery is expected in less than an hour. I'm eager to get to the beach house, air it out, and unpack. I stalk the sand, watching Liv float, dive, and pivot. Though this year has been tough with demanding clients and huge projects that I must oversee, I've made a vow to be a more present parent. As an agricultural engineer, I've spent much of my career in the field, designing equipment, developing methods for land preparation, planting, and harvesting. With the promise of a promotion on the horizon, which would mean more computer work and less field work, I promised Liv I would be more available. I could sign up for PTA meetings. I could chaperone field trips and get to know the other moms at school. I could finally start the garden that Liv has been begging for, but that hasn't happened yet because I'm always so busy with work. My being more available means a lot to Liv, and I want to make her happy. I know that childhood is fleeting. Soon she will be in 4th grade. There will be boys and hormones and battles between friends. I'm already witnessing her childlike traits disappear. Her identity is my little girl transforming into someone else. I don't want time to pass us by. She erupts from the waves every few seconds, her orange long-sleeved one-piece slightly too large. She's growing so fast and caught between sizes. Her crotch sags with collected sand, but surprisingly, she doesn't complain. After a year of no vacations due to my intense work demands, she isn't going to waste a second of this one. When my phone dings in my pocket, I answer, one eye trained on Liv while scanning for shark fins, the other on the message. It's from Michael. as if by thinking about him, I've conjured his text. We really need to talk, Kay. Call me when you can. Por favor, mi amor. I sigh, mi amor. Though we are divorced, there is still so much love between us. I miss him. I miss us. I miss being a family. I text back a reply that we are on vacation, and I will connect with him when we're back in 2 weeks. Disgruntled, I return my focus to the ocean, back to live. The waves climb and crash. Other children scream and play, tossing tiny footballs to each other or riding boogie boards on healthy waves. I search for Olivia's unruly brown curls, her bright bathing suit, that oversized rainbow on the chest. My heart seizes, and I take a step toward the water. One moment, she is there, right there. The next, she is gone.
All right, I think we're going to open it up for questions. If anybody has any.
By any chance were you influenced by Kate Atkinson's Life After Life?
I love that book, but it's so funny when I go to write a book, I try to put everybody else's book out of my mind so I don't feel influenced by it, but I do love that book. It's a beautiful book.
That was a great question.
Can I ask about changing publishers? And
Yes.
yeah, that's always really interesting.
It is really interesting, and I'm so honest about all of it. Yes, so I was with, even though I have published nonfiction, I really consider my true debut in 2018 when Not Her Daughter came out. That was such an exciting time. So I got a 4-book deal with the same publisher, St. Martin's Press. They're all standalone books. It's not a series. And really loved everything about that experience for the first book, the second book, and then the last 2 books unfortunately were in the pandemic, and it was just very difficult to kind of navigate. And I felt like when we got to the end of that 4-book contract, I just wanted something different. I wanted to change, and I didn't feel like I was growing as an author, and I had very, very specific goals. So I decided to kind of venture out. And it's funny because when I wrote this, I was out of contract, so I didn't have a publisher. I wasn't even sure. Quite honestly, I'd put out a book a year for 4 years, and I was a little burned out. So I wasn't even sure. I was like, do I still want to, keep writing fiction? And so I took a break, and this book was just one of the books that came to me. And I didn't have a deadline. I hadn't been paid for it yet. And so when we pitched it, I just didn't know. I don't know if anybody would want it, if the grief would turn some people off, if the dual timelines would work. And then HarperCollins, my editor there, she's fantastic, and got a 2-book deal with them. And then at the same time, I was like, well, I still want to write thrillers. So then I got another book deal with another publisher. So now I have 2 separate publishers, kind of writing 2 totally different types of books, which I find really, really fun and satisfying. So we're going to kind of see how that goes, if I can put out 2 books a year. I'll report that.
You should write a book about that.
I should write a book about that, yeah.
You've mentioned that you have goals. What are some of your goals as an author or as a person?
I love that. It's so funny when we start this journey as authors, we have all of these giant goals, and then when you start digging into them, you realize that they're almost other author goals, and they're not necessarily yours. I think there are benchmarks of being a successful author. Oh, you got to be a New York Times bestselling author. Oh, you got to hit some giant list. And my goals have really, really changed. One of my biggest ones is, though, to see one of my books on the screen as a movie. Not Her Daughter got a movie deal before that came out, but the film world moves so slow, and I'm very realistic about that, but that's probably one of my biggest goals. And then just as a human is just, I know this sounds so vague, but to be more present and to not, we're not going to get into all that, but I am very anti-phone, anti-technology. I'm very kind of woo-woo and practice a whole bunch of stuff to just make myself feel very balanced, and that's super important to me. I'm so passionate about health and wellness and mental health. So that daily goal of just feeling good and feeling present is really important to me.
And you practice what you preach.
I do practice. Right now, oh God, artificial light, coming at me. I'm crazy about light pollution, noise pollution, all the things. It's pretty wild.
Anybody else? All right. Well,
This isn't a question, or it may wind up being a question. In your book, your characters are so different. From the main character to the ex-husband to all the friends and support group that she has. I found that amazing that you could develop the different, because they're so different, their personalities so well without them being main characters. Yeah, you really got a feel of who her people were.
Thank you. Yeah, character-driven fiction. I mean, I think plot-driven fiction is so fun, and thrillers, it's so easy to just have the plot drive it. But with this one, it was weird. Like the characters came to me first, and I always love kind of fleshing those out. And I'm always amazed when authors are like, I write a 5-page character sketch for each character, and I know every trait. I don't do that. Like they kind of. It's so weird. They kind of just come to me fully formed, and it was fun. This is my first book that I've ever just had one point of view, one character all the way through, even though I'm cheating because it's basically 2 stories. But it was fun to pull in some of those supporting characters and not just have them as throwaways, but actually have them feel like support in her life. Yeah.
Well, do you do a lot of rewriting or revising of your original, or you just...
Yeah, I mean, it's so, the way, oh gosh, it's so funny when writers are done with their first draft, it's like, you're not done. This is just the first start of so many times you're going to look at this. So when I turn this in, my editor, it goes through what's called a developmental edit, and your editor sends you back like a 15-page letter with all the things they loved, all the things they didn't, but then there's no real direction on like, fix this, and this is how to do it. They're just like, okay, these are my issues, and then you're just left to figure it out, which is hard for me. I love specifics. Like, hey, we need to fix this character arc's not great, or we need to fix this plot point. So I had a month to just kind of go back in and rework. I actually had her she had a different job and really wanted to make her job work, and had to tweak little things, but there wasn't any huge reworking. I've had to completely rewrite a book before, my 3rd book, Until I Find You. I had to completely rewrite that one at the last minute. So this one was, I always hire an editor before I turn it into my editor, actually, to get it as clean as I possibly can, because I find a lot of like anxiety having to really rework a book, because you're going to look at it. You have to look at a book like 5 times before. By the time it's out, you wrote it to really interesting, like how you're always, what your readers are reading is something you wrote years ago. So you're never really getting to read like what's current, which is interesting. Yeah. I love questions. Keep the questions coming.
So recently we've been talking about Emily Dickinson in my literature class. So have you ever had a case where you were just like, no, I cannot revise this, it has to be the way that it is?
Oh, that is such a great question. So I did have, with my first book, Not Her Daughter, my editor wanted a completely different ending than I did, and I was just really adamant, like, no, as the writer, like, I feel like this is the right way to end it, and I did not take my own advice, and I took hers and changed that ending, and really compromised, like, what I felt like, no, I don't want to change this, and we talked about that for every other book, but I have since then, and since I've kind of learned more, if I really feel strongly about something, like, no, I don't want to touch this, I will speak up. But I think going into it, when you get a book deal and you have an editor, you have to be willing for your work to change. It's gonna change. You have other people's opinions, and I'm not precious about my material. Like, if I feel really strongly about something, but I'm like, yeah, throw it all away. I don't care. I'll start over. I think that's actually kind of fun about being creative, and it's so collaborative. It's such a collaborative experience. So I don't mind. Yeah, it's a great question. More?
I have a book doula question.
Yeah.
Never met a book doula.
Yeah.
But I'm just interested in it
Yeah.
as a process and as a business.
Definitely.
Where do you find that you are the fulcrum or the tipping point where things could have stopped, and you add the ingredient that makes it go again?
Yes, so I love that question. So I am completely referral only with my business, and it's pretty thriving, which I think speaks to how I work with people, and no two clients are the same. So mostly, a lot of times people will come to me and they'll just be like, I have this business or I have this great idea and I really need a book, and they've either written a bunch of it and don't know what to do with it, or they've thought about self-publishing it, or they just have an idea. I am really great at figuring out which publication path for that person to take. So a lot of people come to me, they want the big shiny book deal, they want to get on the Today Show, they want to sell 1 million copies, but when we start really talking about their business or their book or their dreams and their goals, sometimes self-publishing makes way more sense for them. There are barriers to entry with getting a book deal, so I feel like I really help with that information starting out and getting them clear on like why are you actually doing this? Why are you writing a book? And then I do have this kind of like methodology and formula to not only, if you're writing a nonfiction book, some people don't know this, if you're writing a novel and you want to sell it, you write the whole book, it needs to be polished. If you're going to try to sell a nonfiction book, you don't write the book, but you have to create what's called a book proposal, and that's kind of my special sauce, I would say. And 99% of people who come to me, we end up kind of co-creating this book proposal, and then I actually pitch them to agents and editors that I know and play matchmaker to try to get them those book deals. And I think that's also why people come to me, is just relationships that I've built, and they feel like they can trust me on that journey. And yeah, it's really fun because no two people are the same, no two books are the same, but the process is kind of the same. It's just figuring out what works best for that person.
Very cool.
So it's really fun.
Anybody else? All right. I think we're gonna have some books to sign.
Yes.
And I think that's probably it.
That's it.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
coming.
much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.